I have known about you, been praying for you, and then obviously in the last year or so, to be honest with you, I would just get hearsay from people, the people I love and trust, so it wasn't lies, but stitching together, hey, they're in this situation, they're enduring this kind of dilemma. And I know just enough to be dangerous about your story because I'm friends with a mutual friend. But I guess the first thing everybody would want to know from you is, what have you been through? And I mean, you and your family are ministering in Ukraine for how long, by the way?
Yes, we've been there 22 years. So we were supposed to return here in 2020 in the summer for our furlough, but COVID messed it up. And then 2021, there was another
Hiccup, yep. I remember it very intently.
That messed up our travel plans again. So we've been there 5 years straight without any break, so to speak. So this year we finally made it out, but we made it out because of the war. So back in December of last year, the Russian army was surrounding Ukraine on several sides, on the north in Belarus, and on the east in Russia, and on the south in the Crimea Peninsula, and on the southwest in the little sliver of Moldova. They have Russian military and all those sides. So about 3 or 3.5 sides we were surrounded by 100,000 troops. We got some messages from the embassy that, people should consider leaving.
Okay.
This, that, and the other. But we didn't feel like God wanted us to leave at that point. We wanted to stay and see what God had for us and for the people. Because this war that we've seen in the last 180 days actually started back in 2014.
Right.
And it's just been simmering the whole time in the background.
Right.
In one location, just going back and forth across a line that shifted a few kilometers here and there. So we've been dealing with this thing since 2014.
Like a cloud.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's just been in the east. It's been 500, 700 kilometers away. And so, it's normal. To a certain extent, this was just, more intimidation.
This is saber rattling.
Saber rattling.
Yeah.
Because that's what they do. And I know the culture, so I've seen this over and over and over. And so I said, I can deal with that.
Yes, I could see that.
But what happened is that the U.S. Embassy pulled out their staff, and the airlines pulled out, and all the other embassies followed.
What's the timeline on that?
Boom. Somewhere around mid-February.
Wow.
Something like that. That left a vacuum. And at that point, it really wasn't, you really couldn't go. You couldn't go by plane anyway. So if you went out, you had to go out by train or you had to go out by car. Those were the only two options.
Okay.
So we decided to stay. And then on the 24th is when the war started. And I thought, maybe they'll just take more land in the east because that's where they were working for the past bunch of years, since 2014.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out they tried a blitzkrieg on Kyiv, where we were located.
Yeah.
And at that point, you couldn't do anything because there was martial law. There were curfews at night. You can't go out. The stores were closed. Gasoline stations were closed. And so we just hunkered down and just stayed in our apartment. And beforehand, we had stocked up food. So we had plenty of supplies to last for quite a while just because it was a wise thing to do. And we had a go bag ready just in case because it was a wise thing to do. And so we just hung out there, and we heard explosions, and I heard gunfire. We were close enough to hear that, and we were close enough to see smoke in the distance from some of those explosions. But we were kind of sheltered in that we didn't see any of the actual fighting.
Is that because of some fluke situation where you're located or something like that?
It's a geographical situation where we're located.
Okay.
Because we were in a section of the city that's not so easily accessible, and it's surrounded by tall apartment buildings, 19 stories tall. And so we're kind of in this cove or a little secluded area.
Okay.
in the city
Okay.
geographically. So I felt like, we're in a good spot because they aren't going to come in this area, even if they were to come in the city, because we're not a major area. We're not in the major area. We're not in the downtown sector. We're not in the government section.
There's not necessarily a strategic reason to.
There's no strategic reason to come in our particular area of the city. So I thought we'd be okay. And also I thought, there's several possible scenarios. One is that Russia could take Kyiv and then install their puppet, and then the government would just flip and life would go back.
Which would have been the logical historical precedent.
Yeah, things have flipped back and forth there a lot. And so that was one possibility.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured, okay, maybe 3 or 4 days of this and it'll flip. That's a possible scenario. And then the other scenario was that Russia would take more land in the east to connect their existing conquered land with the Crimea conquered land.
Right.
So I thought that would be their plan.
Mm-hmm.
So the Ukrainian military, turns out that they fought back.
You didn't see this coming?
No.
Okay.
No, they fought back and they surprised some people. Everybody, I guess, in the world thought Ukraine would fall within 10 days or whatever.
Yeah.
But it didn't fall completely. It just lost certain parts of its land, and a lot of people's lives have been turned upside down, which I want to emphasize. Pray for the people, because it's the people who are suffering.
Sure.
The 5.5 million refugees who left the country, the 7 million who left their homes within the country, had to restart life and move their kids around, and families split apart. And
just imagine yourself.
And so a lot of our friends are in some of those categories.
Scattered.
In fact, they're in all different kinds of categories. Some stayed, some managed to get abroad, some went to Poland, some to Romania, some to Germany, England. I know people all over the place, U.S., Canada, who got scattered everywhere. And sometimes the husband had to stay behind because of the laws under martial law, and the wife and the children went abroad. Wow. March the 1st, there was a lull in the fighting. I didn't hear any explosions and anything, and I received a message on my phone from the message board of our HOA. We have like an HOA type system there.
Yes.
And they send notes and messages. And they said, if you want gasoline, some gasoline stations are open. So I got in the car, drove down the road, past several barricades, and went to the gas station and waited in line for 45 minutes or so to get the maximum allowed 20 liters of gasoline per car. So thankfully I had some gasoline in the car, and so this basically filled it up. So that was March the 1st. Went to the grocery store to see if I could buy some milk and eggs and fresh products to add to the stuff we had already stored up. But all those shelves were empty in the store, the milk and the eggs and things like that. The long-term shelf food was still there, but the short-term,
everybody had the same idea.
Right. Everybody had the same idea.
Right.
So the next day, the 2nd of March, I was out talking with my neighbors from the apartment building, noticing that a car was there and several families with children and women. I said, "What's that about?" And they said, "Oh, they're evacuating kids out of the apartment blocks, and they're going to take them with some of the mothers or take them to the western part of Ukraine, and they have a driver who's willing to get them through the military checkpoints and all that." And on the window of the car, they had taped with Scotch tape a piece of paper with a big word, "Diti." In Ukrainian, it means children.
Okay.
So I said, "What's that about?" Because for me, that was a new sight. Why would you put the word "children" on a piece of paper on the windows of your car, on the front, the side, the back? And they said, "Oh, that's so that they don't get shot at, so that they'll know that's children being moved to a different part of the country." So that was interesting. That got me thinking, oh, wait a minute.
Things are escalating.
Half the people are gone from our building, and the children are being evacuated.
There's a tea leaf to read.
This is like a sign.
Yes.
It's like a sign. And so the next morning, which was the 3rd, I was talking with my next door neighbor, Oleg, and his wife Larissa, and they decided that it was time for them to go to the western part of the country, because Kyiv, the capital, was almost surrounded. There was only one path out. You can't go to the north to Belarus. You can't go to the east to Russia. You can't go to the west because the bridges were blown up. And so the only way you could get out was to go to the south and then make your way west. And so within an hour, we had decided, okay, we'll go together with our neighbors because there's strength in numbers. 2 cars, 2 sets of people. If something happens to one, you have the other, that kind of thing. And so within an hour, we had thrown everything in our backpacks and into the car, and then we're on the road driving together. So that was interesting. A lot of side stories. One of them I will tell. There were a lot of checkpoints between our building in Kyiv and the western part of Ukraine. Maybe like 50 military checkpoints where you have to go through. Not all of them were manned. Some of them were just barricades where you had to weave around the barricades and go slowly to continue on your path. But some of them were manned with soldiers. And near our apartment, about half a mile, maybe not even that, there was one of these checkpoints. And what they had done is the military had taken this trolley bus car off the railroad tracks and put it across part of the road as a barrier, because they wanted to slow down traffic and make sure that the right people are coming in and not the Russian spies,
Sure,
and people causing
right.
problems. So they were slowing all traffic down at all these locations. Major intersections all had these barriers. But they had used a creative way to take a trolley bus car off the track and put it across most of the road to block the road. So I told Kim, I said, Kim, we may never see this again.
I know, right?
Take a picture.
Never.
Take a picture. So she gets her camera out and sets it up on the dash and starts to take this picture. And then the soldier sees her, Ukrainian soldier. He pulls us over. And he was a really gruff and rough kind of guy. Most of them were nice, but there were 1 or 2 soldiers who were kind of,
right.
I wouldn't want to meet them.
Enforcers. Yeah.
But anyway, he said, you must delete that picture. And he would not let us go until she deleted that picture. So she proved to him and showed that she was deleting the picture. So that's why we don't have any pictures of our.
Wow.
So anyway, our neighbors were in front of us driving, and they had pulled over to the side of the road waiting for us to get through that checkpoint. So we finally got through that checkpoint and went on and joined up with them. And they were really helpful. They got on their phones and called their friends, asking for the right roads.
Pathway through, right. Somebody had done it already.
Yeah. Somebody who's already been on the path, and they know which way to go, which way to avoid, which is the faster way, which is this, that, and the other. So our neighbors were really helpful. And they got us through a lot of those checkpoints because they would tell the soldier, they said, oh, this car behind us is with us. We're traveling together to the west.
Yes.
So that got us through a number of those checkpoints.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Something to bear in mind, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
So knowing the people and building relationships is very important.
Yes. It's also our call as Christians, just as a side note, but also helpful in missions work when being invaded by a. Yes.
There are a lot of parallels to spiritual warfare and all that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we drove like 14 hours that day.
Wow. Stopping for gas and all that.
No, here's an amazing miracle, and I want your people to hear this story, because when we were back in the States, this is months later, we were back here and we were talking with people and describing our route out, just like I've told you the story. They asked, did you stop for gas? And we thought, you know what? We never stopped for gas on that day. We drove drove 14 hours.
That is an incredible story.
I still don't know how that happened.
David, that is just...
So God was doing something there.
Yeah, without a doubt, that's bread and loaves, isn't it, brother? Isn't it? Yeah. Wow. Incredible.
But I didn't realize it at the time. I was just driving.
Yep. In the moment,
And,
right?
yeah, in the moment, trying to get through the situation, you know. But I think that was a miracle, because how can you drive 14 hours on the same tank of
No,
gas?
no, it's physiologically impossible, right? It's
So anyway, but we made it to our destination.
incredible.
We were at Kamenets Podolsky, a great town. It's a tourist town now, but it's a small town. It has a castle built in, I don't know, the 1300s or something, famous for that castle. And we arrived there like after midnight, and our friends had called ahead and reserved a room at a motel for us. And then our paths parted, because they went to stay with their friends and relatives, and then we were going to the motel, and our paths were going to part at that point. But we couldn't find the motel in the middle of the night with GPS, because it had taken us to this road where there was kind of a drop-off and really rocky, rough road. It was pitch black and no street lights and after curfew. And so I was sitting there in the car trying to look at the GPS, trying to figure out what was happening, and a police car pulled up, a regular patrol, and he said, "What are you doing out here?" I said, "Well, we're trying to find our motel. We have a reservation, but we don't know where to go." And so he was nice, even though it was technically it was illegal for us to be out, because it was after curfew and martial law and all that stuff. But he said, "Okay, I'll drive you there." So he actually led us down this rocky, rough road, down to the river, around over the bridge, and we found our motel.
Another miracle.
So
Another miracle. Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, there have been so many miracles like that of God's provision and protection in this whole journey from March until today. Even here in Pennsylvania, where we're staying, and our time here has been another miracle.
Yeah.
And so, so many side stories to tell about God's leading, His in the moment. I remember 5 years ago, being in the States on our last furlough, trying to schedule and plan things.
Right.
Like if we're traveling from here to there, we need to meet with people in between on this day at that hour.
Right.
Because it fits the travel schedule. And then people didn't want to commit to make a plan. And I was so angry. I was so upset 5 years ago. Why are these people? They don't want to commit to anything anymore.
Right.
In the past, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people would actually make a commitment. And
right.
the culture's changed.
That's right. That's right.
They won't make a commitment anymore. And so the people are just living by the seat of their pants on the fly.
Right. But
then this year, after this experience, since March, we've been living by the seat of our pants.
Yes, yes.
So
right.
God's flipped the script on us.
Right. Boy, that's good.
It's been really funny.
And I can see it on your face. Stretched your faith.
While we were driving, Kim was communicating. I was driving, and she was on the phone doing communication through Facebook and other methods, platforms. And so God connected us with a seminary friend who was a seminary student when I was at Dallas Seminary 27 years ago, and he's from Romania. Wow. National. And he invited us to his church to help with their refugee ministry. And he found us a place to live, and we had community. We had opportunities to serve families.
Amazing.
We did humanitarian aid projects, sending in vans loaded with supplies, food, diapers, wheelchairs, medical equipment. We sent a number of supplies back across the border into Ukraine. Wow. to a little city, Chernivtsi, and because there are refugees on both sides of the border. And we ended up helping a non-governmental organization build some 500 square meter tents for feeding and housing refugees temporarily.
Wow.
So they could find other spaces. And
that's incredible.
We just spent a month and a half because God had opened those doors to serve and we were just saying, here I am, send me. I don't know. I've never built these tents before. These are huge, like it takes a crane to install them.
It's a nice place to have an engineer, David.
So I'd never done that before, but okay.
I know, but
God opened the doors and gave a lot of opportunities to serve his
that's
people.
so beautiful, because the presumption would be that you'd arrive, tail tucked between the legs, like shell-shocked, but instead
Serving.
you arrive and serve.
Yes.
That is incredible.
And I think because we were involved in so much with the local church, it's called Harvest Church of Arad, Romania. Since we're so involved in that, we didn't have time to think about ourselves. So we ourselves were living out of 4 backpacks. I had 1 pair of jeans. I had to go buy a second pair so I could wash one and wear the other.
Wow.
And it was just interesting, just a different life. And
Yeah.
And when we eventually we came back to the States and some people started serving us, it flipped the scripts on us again, because then we had to see the perspective from the refugee point of view.
Yes,
And we
yes.
weren't really looking at it from that point of view. We were just looking at it from the missionary point of view of serving. And then when we came to the States, people were serving us. And so we had to look at, oh, wow, really? I guess we were kind of refugees to some extent. Even though I don't consider myself in that same situation as a national.
But your point is solid.
The point is that we have to learn how to give and to receive. And we have to learn how to work together in the body of Christ and to serve one another, to build each other up, just as it says in Ephesians.
And to listen to his spirit moment to moment to moment as the chessboard changes.
And it has been moment to moment.
Yeah.
We have not been able to plan a lot of this because the circumstances have been upside down. And so, okay, I can't do it. God, what's the next step? It's one step at a time, one day at a time.
And can I ask you a question? Do those previous steps of his faithfulness that he's already shown himself to be faithful, does that encourage and do you walk in more bolstered faith because of it?
Yes. The last 3 months, 4 months have just solidified what I already knew before, but has made it even more real, brought spiritual reality into the physical, or into the being.
Yes.
The essence of life. And so that's been amazing to see God do that and to bring his reality into our lives and just say, okay, yeah, I've known it before. He's been taking care of us for 22 years,
right,
and even before that. But now he's once again proven himself even more so.
David.
So it's amazing.
Encouraging, brother. And having been praying for you for so long, really a blessing for me to hear that. I mean, truly. Thank you for being with me, man. I appreciate it.